How does a construction bond work? We hear about bonds all the time, but how do they work and what types are there? Do you want to learn about bonds in just a few minutes? You can even speed up the video and put that tool right in your tool belt. If that's what you want to do, stay with us because that's what you're about to get. All right, so let's dive right into this. A construction bond, otherwise known as a surety bond, is a three-party agreement between the owner, the contractor, and the surety company. Construction bonds are typically used in the construction industry to provide financial security and a surety that a construction project will be completed according to the terms and conditions in the contract. There are several types of bonds in construction, and I'm going to talk about each type right now. Number one, a bid bond. A bid bond is submitted by the contractor to the owner with their bid proposal, and it guarantees that the contractor will enter into a contract with the owner if the bid is accepted, and it will guarantee that performance and payment bonds will be issued. Number two, a performance bond. A performance bond basically makes sure that the contractor will perform the work in accordance with the plans and specs that were listed in the contract. If the contractor fails to do so and defaults on their obligations, the surety company will compensate the owner for any financial losses incurred up to the bond amount. Number three, payment bond. A payment bond guarantees that a contractor will pay subcontractors or trade partners. Suppliers, vendors, or other parties pay them for their labor, materials, and services. If the contractor fails to make payments as required, the surety company will step in to pay any unpaid bills, preventing liens from being placed on the property. And then number four, maintenance bond. A maintenance bond, otherwise known as a warranty bond, provides the coverage of defects in workmanship discovered after the completion of the project. It guarantees that the contractor will correct any deficiencies or issues that arise inside that maintenance period, typically 1 to 2 years after that project is completed. And these bonds, all four types, are typically obtained by the contractor from a surety company, and that surety company assesses the general contractor's financial stability, credit worthiness, and track record before issuing the bond. The cost of the bond, known as the bond premium, is based on factors like the size and complexity of the project, the contractor's credit history, and the bond amount required. In construction, these types of bonds really provide for the owner a certain level of certainty that not only their project will be completed, but it will be completed with the right workmanship, and that subcontractors will be paid well and on time, right? And that at the end of the project that they won't be stuck with any problems dealing with faulty workmanship in the warranty period. So these are really, really neat things, and those are the different types. So the steps in the bond process are these. Number one, contract agreement. The two parties, the owner and the contractor, will enter into the agreement. And as a part of that agreement, these different types of bonds that I mentioned may be required. Number two, surety company involvement. Obviously, like I said, the surety company is going to assess the general contractor, their financial stability, the size and complexity of the project, the credit worthiness of the contractor, and basically get involved and do an assessment. Number three, bond submission. This is where you actually submit for the bond, and it might be as a part of your bid, so that that owner ultimately, as a part of your work, can get that certainty for their project. Number four, and hopefully you don't ever have to go to this point, but bond activation. If there is a default, if there is faulty craftsmanship in the warranty period, right, if the performance standards aren't up to speed, or if a general contractor is not paying their subcontractors, you'll have to activate that bond and achieve that financial backing. Number five, the surety investigation will begin. They don't just take your word for it and send you a check. They dive into the project, they verify what's actually been happening, the status of the contractor, the current state of the performance, the exact numbers for who's been paid and who hasn't, and what is remaining, and what dollar amounts are owed, and they will do that as a part of their investigation of what's happening with those current events once the bond has been activated. Number six, the surety response. Once they've done the investigation and they determine that this is legitimate and that funds need to be remitted, trade partners need to be paid, or the financial losses need to be made up, then that's when the surety company will engage and make sure that they're making it right with the owner of the project. And then number 7, I do want to just note that there are still obligations by the contractor. Let's say that you activate that bond, they do their investigation and they have to make it right. The general contractor is still liable to reimburse the bonding company. So hopefully you never get into the situation, but here are some suggestions. If you ever do, just some quick tips and tricks. But real quick, one thing that would be really, really nice that would create certainty for me is if you subscribe to this channel. That way we can be certain that these videos will head into your feed every time a new one comes out, covering these basics in bite-sized chunks, free just for you. So let's go through these tips real quick, one by one. Number 1, familiarize yourself with the different types of bonds. Know where they're applicable, where they're used, and how they work. Number 2, select reliable surety companies, typically through local organizations or word of mouth or other resources or references. You can identify whether or not a surety company has a good reputation. Number 3, make sure that when you're entering into these contracts that you have thoroughly reviewed the bond requirements that are outlined in the prime agreement, and make sure that you know bond amounts, deadlines, and any other specific provisions that may apply to you. Number 4, always obtain bonds early because there's a process to obtaining that bond and getting it approved. Number 5, if you want to get good bonds, or if you want to get bonds at all, you have to maintain good financial standing. I will say one thing, obviously, right, having a good ethical track record is one thing, but there are services that will allow you in your company to pay for expenses in a way that it reports through credit reporting agencies, and it will build your credit. See, business credit reporting is a little bit different than personal credit, right? If I go buy a boat and a car and all these things, right, my credit score goes down, right? If you report it properly in a business, the more you spend through authorized channels, the better your credit from a business standpoint goes. And so if you and your business are relying on personal credit, or you're not building your credit, or you're not building your credit through the proper payment through these financial institutions that log it through the credit reporting agencies, you might consider doing that so you have a really good credit rating and a really good financial history. Number 6, create a really good open line of communication with these surety companies. Number 7, understand the bond claims process, but even before you get there. It's really nice to go through training on this, whether it's for managers, whether it's a part of a standardized course, or the DBIA certification, or a local training that you can do through one of your communities of practice. Get used to the process before you get stuck in it so that you are aware of exactly how it works. Number 8, document everything, every step of the way as you go, so that you can make sure that you are not caught without the right documentation when you need it, especially during an investigation. Number 9, and this is a big one, monitor subcontractor bonds that you require for them. Make sure that they are lasting throughout the duration, that they're maintained, and that they're accurate and viable. Number 10, address bond issues promptly. You want to get right on it if anything ever comes up. And if you stay after this and monitor this pretty well and ask lots of questions, you're going to be okay. The key here is most of us aren't going to be really expert on these things. We're not going to know it off the top of our head, right? So we're going to have to do some research. We're going to have to talk to these surety companies. We're going to have to ask a lot of questions. The key here is asking a lot of stupid questions, and asking those stupid questions before you need to ask them, right? Out ahead of time. Do the right planning and make sure you know the process from start to finish and what things you need to monitor and maintain. As such, in the description below, I'm going to give you a link to a blog post that we're going to make about this, so that you have these outlined steps and you can follow this process and get this education before you ever need it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. On we go.